Hi, and welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. I'm J.W. Stewart, a veteran broadcaster and journalist with nearly 30 years experience. I've worked at ESPN and NBC, and now I teach at the University of New Haven.
And I'm Sheahon Zenger, Director of Athletics at the University of New Haven, previously the same position at the University of Kansas and Illinois State University. Prior to that, I spent many years in athletic administration and just as many years coaching college football. Welcome to the Dr. Z and J.W podcast.
And back here on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast, as we move on with part two of our episode here, as we celebrate West Haven. Dr. Z, we saw him at Prospect Beach the last time we were together. Now he's back in the office. Dr. Z, have you shaken all the sand out of your sandals yet?
Yeah, I might have had to slap them off outside, rinse off the feet a little bit. You know, feel a little funny being in the office with sand under my toes. I think that's a Kenny Chesney song I like, you know.
It's not a bad way to live. We were talking on the phone the other day, you know, of how much, you know, things have changed for you, obviously, in the year that you've been here. And we briefly mentioned it in part one of this episode before we bring out Ron Quagliani, who was kind enough to wait in the green room for part two of the show here. But how has being here and being at the beach and spending so much time at the beach over the last year, Dr. Z, changed how you are as a human being, especially mentally?
You know, I have friends from the Midwest who ask that all the time when they call from the different conferences I've been a part of, you know, whether it be the Missouri Valley or the Big 12 or whatever. And I'm like, Z, what do you know, we call you for some pump up or for some perspective. And all I say is, you know, I've really learned how to live daily. And I think the beach, the shoreline has as much to do with that as anything. And we talked about it a lot already in the first part of this, that I have a routine that begins at between 6 and 6:20 down at near Bradley Point. And it's time to clear the mind and get set for the day. I've got my notebooks and I'm outlining things, and it really work out of my car or off a bench. And, you know, then at 7:30 or 8, depending on the day, start making my way toward the office. During, you know, the quarantine, it didn't matter if I was here at any particular time. I was alone, you know, for much of the previous few months. I then go through your day and through your work. And as I go home, it's amazing how, whether I'm coming off Campbell Ave or a couple of others, as you go further to the west, you know, wherever you encounter the shoreline or the beach, whether it be Bradley Point or it be Prospect Beach or whatever, everything kind of floats away. And, you know, when I get up to the house, I decide whether I'm going to sit on the front porch and smell the water or actually walk back down. And then we haven't gotten into the weekends, you know, how that floats. That's a whole nother world. That's Jimmy Buffettville over there. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday.
You know, so it's one thing for the ocean and the beach to change you mentally. How has it changed how you dress as an athletic director?
You know, first of all, the quarantine did that. You know, I think in March and April, you know, I usually wore suits to work and or slacks. No, you know, I'm quarantined in my house at that time over in Brantford, and I think I wore jeans for all of March and April. And there was a day in May when I put the shorts on. And the tennis, you know, so there's always the shorts, the golf shorts, and then it's either tennis shoes or flip-flops, depending on what the day's calling for, and then it's a T-shirt or a golf shirt. You know, you've seen me dressed up right now with the collared shirt on. I think we all on campus used to throw on a shirt and a tie sometimes for Zoom calls, and then they just stopped. But the beach certainly influenced that. I rotate about 4 or 5 pairs of shorts and 5 or 6 golf shirts and 6 or 7 T-shirts, and that's my wardrobe.
Yep. You're living the beach life, or some people call it the salt life, and that's a great life to live, certainly. Yeah. And our guest today is somebody who knows all about that, because he grew up in West Haven and is West Haven through and through, and that's Ron Quagliani. He is our guest as we celebrate West Haven here with part 2 of our episode. Ron is from West Haven, went to Notre Dame West Haven High School, which is right next to UNH, has 3 degrees from the University of New Haven, is the father of 2 Chargers, was a West Haven police officer for 25 years, including 5 as the police chief, a member of the West Haven City Council, and as I mentioned, UNH's Associate VP of Public Safety and Administrative Services, and a true Westie. Ron Quagliani, or Ron Q as he's known, joins us now on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. Ron, welcome aboard. It's good to see you. How are you doing?
Hey, J.W., I'm doing well, and thanks for having me. It's a beautiful West Haven morning today.
What does it mean to be called a Westie?
So a Westie for me is just someone that really has a sense of what our community is all about. Typically, you don't have to be born here. You know, there's always a big discussion and a big tug of war whether you're not a Westie because you weren't born here. And really, to me, a Westie is what embodies what we are. I mean, Dr. Z had mentioned it, right? We're a mid-sized town, but really small town community, right? We all know one another. We all come to each other's aid when somebody's in need. And we really enjoy, you know, our neighborhoods and our community and our people around us. So as long as you're part of that, and we're a very diverse community. We have people that move in from all over the country, all over the world, and we really relish that because it makes us richer as a community. So as long as we're all part of that community, I think that's really that community spirit. That's what a Westie is.
Ron, you mentioned that the people certainly make West Haven special. What else makes West Haven special?
Yeah, well, again, for me, if you talk to our newest Westie, right, the one that's probably acclimated himself the quickest that I've ever seen, you know, Dr. Z, I mean, he clearly is enamored with the community itself, but especially, you know, our shoreline. And, you know, we don't take that for granted. We have the largest stretch of public shoreline in the state of Connecticut. And, you know, and that again is another sense of community. Depending on what part of the beach you go, you have these different families or different, you know, individuals that's their spot. They enjoy being there and they enjoy gathering there. And so what I have to tell you, whether it's summer, you know, it's fall, winter, or spring, it doesn't really matter. I think that the beach attracts us and brings us together. But you know, again, as far as me, I've been here all my life. Again, I go back to the sense of community. I think one of the main staples here, you know, besides the community, is really the pillar of our educational institutions. And I think, you know, what the University of New Haven has done in partnership with the community is really something spectacular, not only for this Allentown area, but for the community as a whole.
You know, J.W., you and I have been talking about that even prior to the previous episode, and that is as soon as I moved to the West Haven, West Shore area, the pride that I encountered from Westies when I'd say I'm at University of New Haven. I mean, it was story after story. Either they went here, their kids went here, their, you know, cousins went here, or they worked here, or there was some connection. And that just really kind of changed my life in this first year. It really did. It was transformational. And, you know, one thing I made the mistake. I didn't think anyone knew me. So I have T-shirts from other schools that I'd wear when I'd mow the yard or run to Lowe's. And our basketball coach goes, Z, you can't wear that Illinois State T-shirt anymore. People know who you are. So I came back here and rummaged up a bunch of, you know, Charger T-shirts. The others are truly for mowing the yard, and that's it.
You know, JW, the standing comment here from a lot of, you know, Westies is that, you know, really we should change our name. We should be the University of West Haven, right? Because, because again, they have that Westie pride, and you know, we you know, when people come, they think really that we're in the city of New Haven just because of our name, and then, you know, they figure it out from there.
Yeah, agreed. You know, that shoreline that Ron's talking about. Also, part of, you know, so people don't think you're just on the beach 24/7. It's the restaurants that incorporate that. And that's when I jokingly call it Westieville. I started calling it, you know, the working man's Margaritaville, and I just shortened it to Westieville. And so when I send texts to people around here or back home, they all know what I'm talking about. And it's these restaurants have done a great job of doing outdoor seating and takeout. And so this time of year, that's kind of what you'd be doing anyway. And so it's that flow of being on the beach and grabbing your food and shopping at the stores around and whatnot. And I've become I think the word's provincial. I love Pepe's, right? But I have a hard time going past Mike's or Zupardi's. I just don't really leave this area anymore. From there to, I just said yesterday or this morning, I'm trying to get down to a place called Bonfire, but I can't get past the dive bar. It's or a Riptide. It's our little community.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I mean, the food here. Listen, I'm Italian American, and that's one of my hobbies is eating, right? And I put our pizza, our Italian food, our seafood, and others up against anybody. People travel to go, and we have some of the best restaurants right here. And it, in a strange kind of way, this pandemic, really when they talk about physical distancing and not being able to see individuals, I really think that it actually brought the community together in a respect, because we wouldn't typically have all these opportunities for outdoor dining in the summertime, right? So typically people would be inside in the air conditioning, and now with what's happening, we've relaxed as other communities are outdoor dining. So again, as Dr. Z had mentioned, the dive bar managed, they have more outdoor dining than what they typically had, or the Riptide, or any of these types of restaurants. So it's bringing people, socially distanced together, if that makes sense. But I think it's the sense of community is different, but still very much existent.
Yeah.
Ron, what are your favorite places to go in West Haven? I mean, Dr. Z rattled off some restaurants. They could be restaurants, bars, other parts of the town and the city. What are your favorite places to go to in Westyville, as Dr. Z likes to call it?
Well, I tell you, I mean, I hit them all. So, I mean, I think I don't know if Dr. Z talked about the Campbell Crawl, the unofficial Campbell Crawl, but we have again a wide range of establishments that all have their own sense of history and all and are owned by community members. So I mean, I'll tell you that I do love Italian food, although my wife makes a mean Sunday sauce. So I'll hit all those restaurants. I really will, and enjoy them very much.
Ron, you talked about the Sunday sauce. A year ago, I wouldn't have known what that was. And I've also learned you got to be careful whether you call it sauce or gravy, depending on which house you're in. But I've learned most of my friends around here call it sauce. And I have a story the first time I went to an Italian friend's house, several months ago, and she reached over and just poured the sauce all over my plate. I was trying to be polite and have a little. It was a great memory. And so literally, I've learned that, if I run out of here at lunch, there's, whether it be Provenzano's, Cappetta's, Michelangelo's, I'll go and find a reason to, hey, can I get a side of sauce with that? I just take it home and practically drink it. My wife's like, what do you put? I put on everything. It's the greatest thing ever invented.
And I would agree. I mean, there's no shortage of places to be able to go have something to eat or something to drink, or both here.
Yeah.
Ron, how has West Haven changed over the years?
So, we used to be, quite honestly, really an industrial community. We had a big tire manufacturing plant here and other manufacturing, just typically as many of the cities and towns in New England. And, we were famous for Savin Rock. I don't know if Dr. Z has talked about, Savin Rock and the amusement park and the stock car racing. And that was really a signature, right on the shoreline piece of West Haven history from like 1870 right up to like the 1960s when redevelopment came in. And it's amazing for that time period that, they averaged about 1.2 million visitors a year to that amusement park. And, there's still a lot of memories. I was, I'm older, but I don't have a lot of memories of Savin Rock. I have it at the tail end, with a few things that were there. But we do have the Savin Rock Museum that's, on right next door to Jimmy's Restaurant that has a lot of the history and memorabilia, which is an interesting walkthrough if anybody wants to see that. But West Haven particularly is a bedroom community. But I have to tell you, there's been a lot of revitalization going on. So again, I think as the University of New Haven being the anchor, there's a lot of good things happening in Allentown. Allentown 10 years ago to Allentown today looks very, very different with, the transformation, not only with the University of New Haven campus, but with the Allentown Center area and what's happening there. Yale has done some big investments in Allentown recently, putting up a large distribution center there. So, we're seeing that revitalization in Allentown. We're beginning to see it in the center. We have and listen, it's a long-awaited project that's happening in the center of town. It's a slow mover. I won't discount that, but every intention is that these developers are committed, and that'll transform really our east end of the city, and some areas that typically have been run down and blighted. So West Haven continues to change but I'd say in a good way, in a revitalization.
It's funny when Ron says that, you're going to think all I do is think about food. But when you talk about that East End and that revitalization, Lorenzo's is kind of a cornerstone over there. And I'll admit that was a place I was going a lot. And we were hosting events there with our student athletes. And then the quarantine kind of, shut that down. But as soon as we come out of it, that'll become a headquarters for us again, because he has meeting rooms and things that we utilize. But he's been a good friend of the program and continues to be. And I almost feel guilty. I've gotten so locked into the West Shore area. It's like, wow, that's a whole couple of blocks past Sioux Parties. I don't know if I'm going to drive over there, but when you're talking about the three areas, the Allentown Center and West Shore, it's just a neat community. And I know a lot of our viewers are alumni of the school and understand this, or folks connected to friends of UNH who are aware of this. But sometimes we have parents of student athletes watching, and this episode's really for those who aren't familiar with our community as much as those who can kind of look back in the past and celebrate what they experienced here. I've made really good friends who are alumni from the school I spend a lot of time with, and you talked about the Campbell Crawl. We can't have a weekend without some discussion of the Campbell Crawl or how that then bled over to the beaches. And heck, when Rob Thompson comes back on here, he and his buddies, football players, lived on the shoreline in college. And there's a lot of those stories. My first week or two here, the football players were having a reunion and invited me out. And this was just off of West Shore into Milford. I got lost. And you guys didn't live here in college. They were having a fire pit out on the beach. And this is what we did for fun. I mean, I've never seen a place like this. And that's when I started getting drawn into what a UNH student experience can be. I had no idea I would live, a few blocks from that area, that IGA and Woodmont, that we were on the other side of, and that would be where I shopped, every day. But what a fun memory. And really, I'm just putting that back to you, that these students, I think that's an untold story of so many of our students live along the shoreline in West Haven. And I see them every day.
Yeah, I mean, and that's true. And we have a great town gown relationship with the city of West Haven and the West Haven community. And we really have stepped up in the last several years to really be a community partner. So we don't just worry about what happens behind our walls, if you will, up on the hill, but we are part of the community. And for the university to prosper, we need the community to prosper, and for the community to prosper, we need the university to prosper. So we've worked really well together, and we recognize that we have lots of students that live within the community. Sometimes that's really good, sometimes it's not, but we make sure that the students understand that they are community members as well. And listen, I hear from neighbors all the time, because our students are there and they're doing cleanups and they're helping neighbors, shovel their snow or whatever it may be. So, the 99% of our students that live in the community really reflect what the University of New Haven's all about. And I think that's a great story because, again, we're all community. We're not just the university community or the West Haven community. We're all that part of that same community.
Ron, when I first came here, I was told by President Kaplan and others that our students are different. And they'd use words like humble and gratitude and open, and literally they hold the door for you on campus. I've never been somewhere like this. They say hi. They're those kind of young people. And, once in a while, you and I both get the phone call from, there's been a party or something on a block, but invariably I'll get the next calls from a homeowner on that block that'll say, those are great kids. They shovel my snow, they mow the yard. It's one doesn't go without the other. They're college students. There's going to be some missteps, but they show back up and knock on the door and deliver, thank you notes. It's amazing what they do. And to Ron's credit, when I first moved here, you're on here as kind of the member number one of the community around UNH. When I would talk about moving to West Haven, everyone would say, talk to Ron, talk to Ron, talk to Ron. Before that, it was anything involving West Haven. It was ask Ron, ask Ron. And I'm just trying to fit in there as citizen number 2 at UNH. And the more we can do this, you've got the McGees who live, a few blocks from us. And,
right.
I think we'll create this momentum of those of us who live in West Haven, who work at UNH, really. We're not selling the place out of any falsehood. This is where we live and breathe and have a great time.
And I think it's so important. Like I said, you not only work at the university, but you live within the community. And I think that speaks volumes. Again, we don't see the type of tug of war that some universities and communities see, because it's a tough balancing act when you have a university really embedded within a community. And, there's different things are happening, right? Students live differently than other individuals that may be living in the community. Their hours are different. And so we have conversations, and we continually, work to make sure that we navigate that. And like you said, there are some bumps, but by and large part, I mean, it's a pretty great relationship.
Yeah.
Let's bring out our producer, Broccoli Rob Thompson. Like Ron, Broccoli Rob is from West Haven, went to school at UNH. Rob still works for the university. He's our director of development. He played football. He's in our Chargers Hall of Fame. And Rob joins us from behind the scenes from his home in Florida. And I'm not even going to make a comment about the shirt. I'll let Dr. Z and Ron make a comment about the shirt. Rob, I actually love the shirt, but I'm not so sure if that would fly in Westyville.
Well, I just, down here with the Costanzas and Del Boca Vista, when in Rome, right?
Here's a question.
Doesn't look like Westy Blue you have on there, Ron.
Always. Those were my eyes, Ron. Those were my eyes.
Here's a question for both you guys. Ron, we'll start with you, and then Rob, I want you to answer the same question. Because both you guys grew up in West Haven, and Ron, you went to high school next door at Notre Dame West Haven, was there any doubt you would go anywhere else but UNH? Did you even look at any other colleges?
I did not. I knew that this was the place that I wanted to go. I had an unusual college path, where I was like the part-time student for 10 years to get my bachelor's degree. I graduated Notre Dame in '82. Started here right after that in the fall, and then applied and got hired for the West Haven Police Department at 18 years old. So I was like one of the youngest police officers. The ironic thing is I would go into the bars to police them, but I wasn't old enough to go in to have a drink, right? So that was for 3 years, and my mother had a sign to buy my bullets for practice because I wasn't old enough either. But so I worked at the job, and then once I got settled there, I did the part-time for 10 years until I got my bachelor's degree. But yeah, this was and again, the university has a great relationship with the town and the police department that allows that to happen for officers to go part-time to kind of work around their unusual schedule. So that's kind of how my undergrad life worked out.
Yeah, from my perspective, it was we had a head coach at that time, Larry McElreavy, who he was very aggressive in the area recruiting players. And West Haven, I think he rated 6 of us out of there to stay home, and a lot of kids from the Valley, Ansonia, Naugatuck, and Hartford. So he was building the base of our program around the kids in that area. And that wasn't necessarily a school that that I would have chose to begin with. To be quite honest with you, I wanted to go away, but it was a coach that saved me because I had very limited options academically, and New Haven gave me that chance. I was a criminal law, I was a law enforcement major, and I started off my career, working at juvenile detention facility and, as a state juvenile officer. And, so everything for me, it was an easy thing. Once I experienced New Haven as a college student, not as a West Haven resident, things changed for me, and the light bulb went off because my dad and my grandfather was able to watch every single practice for 4 years. And and I met my wife at University of New Haven. So it all worked out.
Did you guys know one another when you were in school, Ron? I know you said you were there for 10 years, part-time while you were working for the West Haven Police Department. Rob, you were there at the same time. Did you guys know one another when you were there together on campus?
I mean, I've known Ronnie since we were kids. We grew up. Yeah, we grew up. I don't know, 2 blocks away from each other, and his parents had the grocery store down the street, and so he'd been a big part of the community forever. I was just going there, and his mom would give me loaves of bread. That's and right? So it was great.
Yeah, and Rob, exactly, and that was a cool thing too. I mean, I was fortunate enough to grow up, and again those public-facing positions, right? Not public life, but like Rob said, I worked in a grocery store since I was 14 years old, and in the West Shore of West Haven, and kind of started as the stock boy, and kind of hung with it until my parents actually bought it, several years later, and we ran a small grocery, in West Haven. Again, met a lot of great people that came and patronized the store and became friends.
Yeah, you would roll out of Randall's and then go up and grab some milk and bring it home. Yeah, it was great.
I don't know if I remember it that way, but all right.
I got to ask you too, when you say Randall's, I don't live far from there, and I actually landed probably in between where the two of you grew up in terms of where my house is. But right next to Randall's is duck pin bowling. I never heard of duck pin bowling in my life, and it seems to be a big thing around here.
Oh, you got to go. You said you've never been?
Never been.
Oh, you got to go. I mean, some parts of the country they call it candle pin or whatever, but it's we don't call that here. I mean, it's duck pin bowling, and that's had a storied history of ownership from Mac back in the day to Danny and Tommy to Dave Therese to now Bob Nugent, who is again another icon. In the community, him and his family, and he's owned it for several years. And it's a good spot. It's a family spot, but it's a good spot if you want to go with a bunch of the guys and have a couple of drinks and do some bowling. And it doesn't. Well, I'm going to tell you that they'll tell you it requires a lot of skill. I just take the ball and whip it down the alley and hope for the best. So, but it's a lot of fun. You got to check it out.
Yeah, Ron, for those people who don't understand duck pin bowling, that's a very, very New England thing, obviously. What's the difference between duck pin bowling and what most people just recognize as bowling?
So duck pin bowling is they're small pins. They're half the size of a regular pin. They're small balls with no holes in them. It looks like a bocce ball, if anybody knows, what that is. And then, you get 3 shots. So in case you screw up the first 2, you always got one to try to help you out. But yeah, it's a lot of fun.
Rob, you've been duck pin bowling, I imagine, in your time in West Haven?
Oh gosh, yeah, we used to hang out there all the time, and they had pool table. Yeah, it was a cool place growing up as a kid. There was always something to do, and Woodlawn Bowling Alley was always one of them.
J.W, when you ask Rob if he's done that, I've talked to Rob so many times, and I'd love to back out and let Rob and Ron tell stories of, growing up. Rob talks about his mom dropping him off at the pier and all day, and as he got older, he got a little sailboat. And I love the story of you taking the sailboat out to the breakers and, catching lobster, and until one day you almost drowned doing that and no longer went out that far. But these are, I grew up, harvesting wheat. It's like I'm watching a movie when I listen to you guys.
I mean, I don't know what to say about harvesting wheat. I mean, that just seems so, that sounds thrilling. Yeah. I mean, Yeah, a lot of times I was so tired I couldn't sail back. My parents used to have to go down Chick's parking lot to pick me up and drive me home, from sailing all day. But yeah, it was great. It was a great place to grow up.
Yeah, a lot of great memories. It really was. And, even much younger, there was no, we went to the Woodlawn Bowling Alley. We went to the, the video arcades, right? I mean, those were the gathering places, at least in the younger years. You go out and you go with your friends where you want to go. When the street lights come on, it's time to come home. So it's there's a lot of great memories, and I look back now and I can't believe it's been all those years ago. But it's they're still pretty fresh in my mind.
Yeah.
Ron, have you traveled much? I know you've been in West Haven for so long. I did a little bit of research, and I know that you and your wife like to go to Aruba, but I think it's like for me, where I grew up in Newport, I don't think I didn't really understand how good I had it growing up until I went away and then came back and you were like, oh, that was a pretty cool place to grow up. Have you had an experience like that, or did you know from the time that you were young because of your family told you that how lucky you were to grow up in West Haven?
It was circumstance. So we travel, and there, we've been to a lot of different places. We've never actually lived anywhere else, right? But it's just, so my grandfather, he started in West Haven, and he built a bunch of the houses that are in the West Shore now. This was back in the 50s and the 60s. And again, my dad was a police officer, and our roots were in West Haven. And then I have, 3 older siblings, which again established their roots. They went to West Haven High School. My brother Ray worked at Jimmy's restaurant way back at the time when Jimmy's was in front of Savin Rock, and right, it was a strictly takeout place, back in the 60s and the 70s. And so, I mean, we've lived and breathed, West Haven. So, we've been other places, but this is home to us. It feels right, and the people, I talked to it before, the sense of community for us, our kids are here, our kids, work here. I've worked as a police officer here for 25 years, and, I made that big move, 2 miles up the road to the university, for the last 10 years. So, while I'm aware of what's around us, I still think that we're in the best place there is.
Rob, same to you. You've lived in different places. You're in Florida now. You were in Saratoga Springs before. Do you have more of an appreciation of West Haven now, or did you always have that sense of appreciation?
Oh, without a doubt. Since coming back to university, for me, the timing was I needed to have closure, because I don't think I left for, I needed closure. I needed closure on my friends, my family. I needed closure coming back and some of the things I wanted to get accomplished at UNH, to say thank you for giving me that chance, 35 years ago, and taking a chance on me. So coming back home, I've always been proud to be a Westie, very, very proud of it. It built the foundation of who I am, and it kind of defined my career, and that it was always been that, me against the world mentality, and you throw on top of it growing up with dyslexia and going to a public school, I had a lot of chips against me. And I think and Ron can attest to this, that's kind of who we are as Westies. We were always the ones, like I said before, who, J.W. and, like you said, and it's you're right on. I mean, people called it West Haven for a long time. They still do, and that's part of who we are. We're overcomers, in everything that we do. So for me, yes, J.W., thanks for that question. It is coming home for me. And I just feel like I needed that closure, in the last 4 or 5 years have been able to do that for me.
Yeah, Rob, you're spot on. We're scrappers and we're fighters. Right, we may not do it the most proper way sometimes, if you will, or we may not package it the best way. But we're, don't ever count us down, because we're definitely scrappers.
What you two just said is what I've fallen in love with in the area, and it bleeds over to UNH. And those words are words that I've used in our recruiting pitches to young people, that we're gritty. We're scrappers, we're fighters, we're overcomers. We're the place to first opportunities and second chances. And I think that's what's helping us get through this pandemic. I mean, we're coming in with record enrollment I'm going full sales here. Record enrollment during a pandemic. If that's not a testament to the University of New Haven and West Haven, I don't know what is.
Yeah, and our history shows we're fighters. I mean, there's no secret that we've struggled in the last 20 years, financially. I'd like to say that we're on a much better footing than we were. But even our history, we started out right as fighters. I mean, if you kind of take a look at our history right here on the University of New Haven campus, we have a monument to Adjunct General Campbell, which he was the British adjunct general that invaded West Haven, then New Haven at the time, and marched his troops up Campbell Avenue, where they injured, Noah Williston, who was the minister at the First Congregation Church. They were ready to kill him. General Campbell says, nope, save his life, set his leg, marched up towards Allentown, and he ended up getting killed by the militia. And we're the only community that has a main commercial thoroughfare named after an invading party, right? Adjunct General William Campbell. So, and then we were outgunned. I mean, they had, like 1,500, soldiers. We had, a few hundred militiamen, and they fought him back. Our city seal has Thomas Painter, on top of Savin Rock looking out for the ships. And that was that day, when he looked out to see the British coming, and so Thomas Painter, Painter Park, Painter Avenue, that's, he's part of our city seal now. So back since our settling, we were always scrappers, and we've always managed to succeed.
That's an incredible story. I didn't know that. I hope everybody stays on to hear that story and the history. And Ron, I'm going to buy you a couple of beers and plumb a little deeper on that history. I'm the guy who used to tell the story of the Civil War in Lawrence, Kansas. I'm going back a couple, 100 years, several hundred years, I love driving up and down the road and seeing, West Haven founded, Milford founded, Branford founded. I mean, I've gone back in time.
Yeah, so Doc, in between North Campus and Main Campus, right, is a monument there, fenced-in monument that's maintained by the Historical Society for Adjunct General William Campbell. It's just about on our campus.
Wow.
I think that was part of your police chief exam. You had to get that answered right.
Hey, Broccoli Rob, I know time's getting short for you. We appreciate you joining us here, as always, on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast. Thanks for everything you do for us, and thanks for everything you do for the University of New Haven as our Director of Development. Final words before we let you go?
I think, we're very lucky to have someone like Ron, part of our university, part of our community. It's one thing when you're a police officer, police chief, you get a different perspective on town. You know all the stories, all the characters, and really the city and our school couldn't have been in better hands than having Ron with us and Chris Reed. We joke about it. We were like, there's way too many Westies involved in this whole thing right now. But thanks for having me, Ronnie. Always good seeing you.
You too, Rob. Thank you.
That's Broccoli Rob Thompson, our show's producer. And as we get ready to finish up with Ron Q here, Ron, I had just one more question for you, and then any others that Dr. Z has, I'm sure he can ask before we wrap things up with you. We appreciate your time. I know you're busy, especially as you pull a lot. You got a lot going on. You got a lot on your plate, as we said before, not only here at the University of New Haven, but as a father, but also as a member of the City Council in West Haven. As a member of the City Council, what can you tell us about the future of West Haven?
As I had alluded to, we've had our bumps in the road, and history will tell us over the last 20 years that while decisions were made during that time, you hate to be a Monday morning quarterback, but I think sometimes it's you have to make the hard right sometimes, as opposed to taking the easy way out. I think that's happened. I don't think it was intentional, but I think we're on track right now. Financially, we're on track. I think we're in a good place. I think I mentioned the revitalization that you see economically, but at the end of the day, what really gives me the most pride is that same core of community and fighters and gritty people that want West Haven to succeed are there and brighter than ever before. And So I have no doubt that we will be stronger as we go forward.
Dr. Z, any final questions for Ron before we let
No,
him go?
kind of hard to top that. And Ron got my brain going down the history path here. So I'm just looking forward to the next time we can sit and talk about that for an hour or two. And yeah, I'm just grateful for in my time here at UNH and West Haven. Ron's the guy who gets my texts or calls that helps me navigate, the small things that as a family, you have a question about this, that, and the other thing. And heck, he even helped me execute my move here, during a time of quarantine, and we did it safely. And, all the things you've heard me talk about over the last 3 months, the joy my family's had wouldn't have been possible. They'd have been stuck somewhere in the Midwest and wouldn't have been here. So we got here and we got going and we got moved in. And, I just will always be grateful for May, June, and July. It's been 3 of the best months of my adult life and a lot of fun.
Ron Quagliani, or as he told me before, how they say it in Italian, Quagliani, right? There's no G.
Good. Yeah, very good.
Ron Quagliani, our Associate VP of Public Safety and Administrative Services here at the University of New Haven, and a Westie through and through. Ron Q, thanks for joining us here on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast.
It was great to be here. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Ron.
All right. Bye-bye.
Dr. Z, this has been 2 great episodes here. As we actually wanted to do this as 1 episode, but we couldn't do it. I mean, that's how much we have to say about how great the city of West Haven is as we do this celebration episode or 2-part episode. Your takeaways from the last couple of days, the last couple of shows, your time at the beach, and then letting a couple of Westies kind of go back and forth. And I'd say 3 Westies, because I put you in that mix now too.
I just really enjoyed watching them talk, and I just kind of sat back and watched and, threw in a comment about duck pin bowling and then watched them run with that. It's that what you're seeing is, again, the pure joy I've had of just living in this area. And when you get the Westies going, when you're sitting at the outdoor seating at dive bar having wings and their steak bomb and some of the other things they have that are famous, just letting them tell stories it makes you just really appreciate living here and embracing all this. And as I've told you, my 3 almost grown children just had a blast here this summer. And it's because of people like Ron and Rob and children of their generation that embraced my children. And, I also learned, I never thought about it. Ron Quagliani is really Quagliani.
Quagliani, yep.
Just like Zenger, there's no G. It's a soft G as well. I never thought of saying it that way, but every once in a while people throw out the hard G, Zenger, and I'm like, no, that's. Yeah. I until today, I'd never thought of it in that direction.
It's easier just to go with initials, Z, Q, J-Dub, right?
That's why we do it. Broccoli.
That's right. You were talking about history lesson. I'll give you a quick history lesson. I had to look this up because I didn't know this, but Ron's history lesson on General Campbell is phenomenal. It's a great story. How about this, Dr. Z? So West Haven was settled in 1648 as West Farms. That's what it was called way back when. Now, for a long time, West Haven and North Milford were together, and they were part of Orange, which is the town next to West Haven. Uh-huh. It was not until 1961 that West Haven was incorporated into its own separate town. So West Haven, figure this out, West Haven is Connecticut's youngest city, but one of the state's oldest settlements. Wow. 1648 for the settlement, 1961 for the city. Pretty amazing, huh?
That is fascinating. I'm sure Ron knows that. If we didn't do this episode, I'm not sure I'd have ever known that, And yet, when you get to know the folks in West Haven, I'm sure they never felt like it was anything but its own community, town, et cetera. And then I'm sure there's an evolution of the whole 3, the Allentown Center and West Shore communities within that. It's a fascinating place to live and grow and get to know people.
Well, we had a couple of great alums on today. Ron, as I mentioned, has 3 degrees from the University of New Haven. And, of course, Rob graduated from UNH. And speaking of UNH alums, we'd like to let the alums in our audience know about the upcoming Centennial Ball, which will be held virtually this year, Saturday, October the 3rd. We want to encourage all of our alumni to register. The price this year, very reasonable, just $25 per person. It promises to be a memorable evening of student showcases, entertainment, and a live auction. And we'll have more details as they become available here on the Dr. Z and J.W podcast and also on the New Haven website. Your support through the Centennial Ball will help us get closer to meeting and hopefully even succeeding our ambitious $120 million Charger Challenge goal, which is part of the campaign for the University of New Haven. For more information and to register for the Centennial Ball, go to newhaven.edu/alumni. Dr. Z, this is a big deal every year, obviously in person. This year be done virtually, but we hope to have a great attendance this year as well in October.
We're looking for record numbers, and we're really looking for a good chunk of that coming from our student athlete alumni. And you're going to hear me say this probably every week between now and then. Why do this? It's during this I'm going to say it. I hate the word pandemic, but it is. It's us being what Ron and Rob talked about, being gritty and overcomers, and it's our way of showing the current student athletes and the current students and faculty and staff, we're giving them hope that not only are we making it through this time, we're coming out stronger on the other side. And we've had so many donors step up already during this time period. We need everybody, big and small, just to show their support for those students following in their footsteps, so that we can keep putting them out into the world as leaders and the right kind of leaders, those gritty overcomers that really get it done. We're not looking for the fancy folks. This is University of New Haven in West Haven, and this ball will be a celebration of that as well.
Absolutely. The blue collars, absolutely. It's one of the reasons why I think our colors are blue and gold, and yep. Us against the world, which I don't think is a bad mentality. I think that's a good mentality to have, Dr. Z.
That's right. Let's go get them.
Yeah, all right. Well, that'll do it for this two-part episode of the Dr. Z and J.W. podcast as we celebrate the city of West Haven and its connection with the University of New Haven. For Ron Quagliani and for Broccoli Rob Thompson, our producer, for executive producer John Mays, for Dr. Z, I'm J.W. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.